Hello guys, this is Manuel Valle, and this time I want to give you the welcome to this small tutorial for Git Fundamentals. So what we are going to see on this video, something about how to use the basic features of Git. So what is Git? First of all, I think this is the first question. Git is a free and open source distributed version control system. So basically, as an easy translation, it is like we, the developers, distribute our source code along the different teams. So we create a code, we upload into the repository, and then someone else is able to download it. It is designed to efficiently handle every type of project. So that means that if you have a project in Node.js, if you have a project in Python, C#, Visual Basic.NET, Blazor, any kind of technology, even a single notepad text document or something like that, you are able to handle with this version control. It is easy to learn. Well, it is easy at the end, but in order to start working with it, you have to modify a little bit your mindset because most of the version control systems are, I have the code in my computer, I upload it in the server, and that's it. The difference between Git and the rest of the version control systems is that in Git, you have an extra area, which is called the working area. So you have a remote repository, then that remote repository is cloned into your local computer. Then you have a local repository. And then when you start typing some changes, those changes are located in something which is called the working area. We're going to see it in action in a little bit, don't worry. And this is the most used version control system nowadays. I mean, it used to be Team Foundation version control. Before than that, it used to be SVN. But nowadays, you should get familiar with Git because it is most used in a lot of enterprises, a lot of companies. So it is a good idea to start learning it. Okay, so where to host a Git repository? This is an interesting question, and it causes some confusion between what is Git and what is a Git repository. So Git is a technology. Git and the Git repository or the host is the place that has their own Git server to store the different repositories you are going to be creating along the time. So you have many different choices such as GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and SourceForge. Personally, I like GitHub, and as far as I have read, GitHub is the most used platform to host public or private repositories. The difference between a public or private repository is a public one is one that you have to take a lot of control because you are able to share with everyone that gets into your Git repository, and that person can clone it, can see the code, can do different actions, and if you are not prevented, then everyone can commit their changes into your repository. So unless you are working with a open source project and you want to have many different people to contribute into your project, you can use it public. Otherwise, you can use a private one. In that private one, then you select who is going to be able to contribute in your project. So that's the basic difference. Then let's talk a little bit about the repositories in GitHub. So basically, inside of the GitHub, you can create as many repositories as you want, if I remember correctly. I think there is not a limit. But if there is one in the free, then you have the option to pay. But Don't worry. I mean, I think it is a huge amount of repositories you can create. And basically, a repository, it's a project itself. So let's say if I'm creating let's say a system that handles a point of sale or something like that, then you create a repository for your point of sale. You can create a repository for your API, and then you can start working on your local computer, doing the changes, and upload those changes into the branch that is inside a repository. But what is a branch? So moving into the anatomy of a repository is something very simple at the beginning. When you create a repository, you're going to have a main branch. This main branch is the one that is basically changing every time inside of the repository, because when you do the changes on your local computer, then those changes are pushed into the main branch. There are some approaches that teams in the companies uses, like a feature branch or something like that, and that helps to have different branches working on different features, and at the end everyone is pushed to the main branch through a pull request. But we can talk about that in the next video. For now, we are going to be focused on the easiest part, or the basic part, which is create a repository. That repository is going to create the main branch. We are going to clone that repository, and we are going to change it, commit those changes, and push those changes into the main branch. So basically, what I mentioned in the previous slide, this is the first command that we are going to check, the git clone. This git clone is going to help us to get what we have in the remote repository into our local computer, which is called the local repository. That local repository contains a local branch. So this local branch is the main, and as I mentioned, when we change something in the code, then that converts in a working area. Okay, I still know it's a little bit confusing, but don't worry, it's gonna be clear in a few minutes. Then after we complete the code, sorry, this is not the one. After we complete the code in the working area, we use the second command, which is git commit. So this git commit, well, before the git commit, there is another command, which is git add. The git add is for highlighting the main branch that we have some changes that we want to include into this main branch. After those changes are in place with the git add, then we use the git commit to move those changes located in the working area into the local main branch. And then the other command that we are going to study is the git push. This git push is going to put all these changes into the remote repository. And when we apply this git push, then what we have in the local repository is going to be placed in the main branch. That's it, more or less the way it works. Then, now the presentation, sorry, the slide that was wrong at the beginning. Now, let's say, for example, someone else already has the local repository in their computer, but they want to have the changes you just pushed into the main branch. So he used this command, which is git pull, and with this git pull, he's going to be able to get all your changes, or all the changes that are located in the main branch that are not in the local branch. So basically, it's a kind of delta between what is in the remote repository and what is in the local repository. And then let me explain you a little bit about the commands. So the first one we saw is the git clone, which clones the remote repository in the local computer. Git status is one that I was mentioning before. gives the status of the local branch versus the remote branch. So that means what do I have in the local branch, or sorry, what I don't have in my local branch, but I have in the remote branch, and it is in my working area. So it is going to tell you the difference and what needs to be included. Then the Git add includes the changes that were highlighted in the Git status. The Git commit -m message basically commits the added code or the changed code of the local area, of the working area, into the local branch. The Git push is the second part after the Git commit. The Git push sends the local branch contents to the remote branch. And finally, the Git pull is the one we mentioned of someone that wants to get the latest changes of the remote branch, okay? And I think that's pretty much for theory. Now, let's talk a little bit about the practical course. So for this thing, we need to place first thing first. We have to install some software for being able to connect, and also we need to create a GitHub account. So in order to do that, let's move to GitHub account on github.com. Then we need to register our account using an email address and following the steps. Then when you are done, you need to get the official Git software from this page, git-scm.com. And finally, this is optional but very important, and I'm going to show you how to use it. This is the GitHub desktop. It is available on this location, github.com/apps/desktop. Okay. And so install these two tools at least, or these three tools if you want to, and we are coming back in a while.